persuasive speech about domestic abuse awareness and prevention. About every minute behind closed doors, someone is living in fear inside their own home, a place that is supposed to be safe. This is reality for millions of individuals experiencing domestic abuse at the hands of someone they know and trust. Although domestic abuse affects countless of families, many cases are often dismissed and ignored or even just never reported in general. The relevance, I think women are disproportionately affected by domestic abuse, most often by intimate partner, and much of the violence is influenced by societal standards, cultural expectations. Often, they pressure victims to remain silent and endure their abuse. A study published by the National Library of Medicine found that patriarchal norms, stigma surrounding divorce, pressure to preserve marriage, fear of retaliation, and the normalization of violence are major factors that play within domestic abuse. Um, as a college student majoring in health science, I think learning about domestic abuse is especially important to me because it directly affects both physical and mental health, and understanding the warning signs that allow health professionals and community members to identify abuse early and provide meaningful support. Also, kind of going forward, um, why domestic abuse, well, why domestic abuse happens. Um, Most of the time, abuse happens because it is driven by a desire for power and control in healthy relationships. Partners respect one another, boundaries and well-being. In an abusive relationship, the abuser dominates and isolates their partner. Education is essential. Victims often stay not because they choose abuse, but because they kind of are manipulated, and creates hope that the violence will eventually stop. And then, kind of going forward, why domestic abuse happens. Domestic abuse is driven by a desire for power and control. In healthy relationships, partners kind of respect one another, while or respect their well-being too. In an abusive relationship, the abuser dominates and isolates the partner. Abusers often begin by limiting who their partner is, who they can talk to, starting with friends, family, and eventually extending to coworkers. This isolation kind of makes the victims increasingly dependent on the abuser. Threats, intimidation are also common. Mental health professionals Annie Joseph and Gailey Clark explained that intimidation can involve threatening gestures, destruction of property, or aggressive behavior, such as slamming doors, throwing objects. These actions instill fear and reinforce control, kind of highlighting the necessity of community and professional support systems. Um, well, also, kind of like going forward, physical abuse is also a common form, or usually found in domestic abuse. And as I said, abuse takes many forms, but physical violence is the most recognized physical of abuse, includes actions such as slapping, punching, and kicking. Victims may hesitate to ask or seek help due to fear or just normalization of violence. Physical abuse often kind of leaves injuries like bruises, cuts, or broken bones. Repeated violence can also cause long-term health problems, including neurological damage and stress-related disorders. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 29% of women and 10% of men have experienced physical violence from an intimate partner. According to author Lindy Barcroft, emphasizes the seriousness of this behavior by stating, physical aggression by a man towards his partner is abuse, even if it happens only once. Kind of concluding this all together, domestic abuse is a serious and widespread issue that causes tasting, physical, psychological harm, and kind of understanding how abuse happens and why it continues reinforces the importance of education and early intervention. Accessible support also kind of helps raise awareness and kind of will save lives by helping victims recognize it before it escalates. Um, Closing, as Judith Lewis Harmon writes in her trauma and recovery novel, she states, in order to escape accountability by his crimes, The perpetrator does everything in his power to promote and forgetting. By speaking out, learning the signs, and supporting victims, we ensure the abuse is not forgotten and can be healing. Thank you.